Local stories, local people. We're taking you inside Western Mass news. It's the Even Better Western Mass podcast with Dave Madsen.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Hope you're doing well as we wind down the month of June and we get ready for the big July 4th holiday weekend. While the celebrations of our nation's independence this year, though, a lot different than in years past. Big celebrations and fireworks displays, of course, have been canceled. That includes the Boston Pops annual 4th of July concert on the Esplanade along the Charles River in Boston, and the historic cancellation of the summer season at Tanglewood in the Berkshires. That also means a rare 4th of July off for Pops conductor Keith Lockhart. Lockhart is celebrating a quarter of a century with the Pops as its conductor. And like all of us, he's been in quarantine at his home with his family since March, but he's been keeping very, very busy. Keith Lockhart is my guest on this week's edition of Even Better Western Mass.
My guess is this is not the way you expected to celebrate your 25th anniversary with the Pops.
You know, I don't think this is the way any of us expected anything to happen. When I think back, what is it? 3 short months now, and a little more than 3 months, and to watching this thing come upon us, but having seen SARS and Ebola and all those things being mentioned as possible pandemics, and who knew that we would have ground to such a screeching halt. Of course, it didn't really strike us in the performing arts that one of the very first things that goes away when you start stopping large assemblies of people is concerts, shows, that sort of thing. And that's what we do. We're about bringing people in community to watch another group of people in community up on the stage. So no, I didn't expect to be spending my 25th anniversary answering questions about how it felt to not have my 25th anniversary.
Now, the entire Pop Spring season's been canceled. Tanglewood has been canceled. The 4th of July concert on the Esplanade, the live concert canceled. When was the last time you had a 4th of July off?
Well, there was one year, I believe it was 2014, that we actually didn't do the concert because of severe weather, and we broadcast the tape of the previous night, which we always run as a backup, the dress rehearsal. But even that day I wasn't really off because we didn't pull the plug until 6 p.m. So, it was basically in ready mode the whole time. But honestly, before that, the last time I had a 4th of July off was 1989 or 1990. So I'm kind of lost. I don't know what real people do on the 4th of July. I'm getting my barbecue tongs out and trying to work with them. No, it's very strange. I mean, it's always been like, it's like Santa Claus at Christmas. I mean, it's something that has always been an expectation that I wouldn't have that day off. And now all of a sudden I'm kind of going, oh, well, where's the party? Where's the properly socially distanced party?
Now, that said, I know you've been keeping very busy. And one of the things that, let's face it, put it this way, that folks are not going to have a 4th of July without the Boston Pops. You're working on a Boston Pops salute to our heroes. Tell me about that.
Well, continuity was very important to us. So many people, I mean, not just in Boston or Massachusetts, but around the country and even further, really think of the Boston Pops Fireworks Spectacular as the way the holiday is celebrated. And we want to keep that going. Obviously, we want them to think of 2021 as well. So it was really important to us that we have a presence on the 4th of July. And we started thinking about this long before we actually canceled it, because I think, even by April, it was pretty clear that it was going to be hard to get 500,000 people in the live audience united. The idea was that we would put together a retrospective show, which is easy for us to do because we got so much great material. We talked to all the artists involved. It gave us kind of a special lineup that we could never afford to get on the same season. Everybody was enthusiastic and eager to grant the rights to re-show what they'd done, and we decided that rather it couldn't just be a rerun. Though, we really had to contextualize it where we are here and now, because we are in such a incredibly meaningful place here and now between COVID and the social unrest, calls for change that have dominated everybody's thoughts for the last few weeks, we really felt that we needed to do new intros, new contextualization, and some new material, which we have new material, some performed virtually by the entire Boston Pops and some in a little bit more intimate setting, to give this show a sense that it's going on July 4th of 2020, which is going to be one of the most extraordinary, we're all going to remember this time. This is the defining time in all of our lives, for me, I was too young to be there for World War II. And I miss the Great Depression, the things that my father went through. But boy, is this going to look back on this and you're going to tell your grandkids or your great grandkids.
Indeed, and it seems like I am thankful that you are doing that. I know it'll be on Bloomberg TV and other outlets too, but we really need that right now.
I think it's, I think it's possible for music to be something that brings people together, that allows people to recognize in a kind of a non-confrontational way the things they have in common, the things they share. And I think it's possible for the show to be patriotic and uplifting without turning a blind eye to the things that need to be dealt with.
In your career and in your time, we've never really seen, for our generation, a time like this. I mean, I do remember from and you, to some extent, you're a bit younger, the Vietnam War and 9/11. We all went through those times, and the Boston Marathon bombings for us here in New England. But nothing like this now.
And nothing that was worldwide in scope. I mean, yes, of course, we all went through 9/11, and it was a horrible moment, but it did not have the effect of shutting everything down far and wide on a global scale for months and months. And I do remember Vietnam, but hazily. I mean, I was born right before the 60s began, so I remember some of the unrest that was going on in that. But this is, if there's a definition of a defining moment, this is the definition.
And I've heard someone talk about this too, that this is kind of the great equalizer for all of us, whether you're the conductor of the Boston Pops, whether you conduct a train on the MBTA, we're all in this boat together.
We are. You're right. It is a great equalizer. Even having been said, obviously there's distressing news that it's not necessarily a great equalizer in outcomes or people who are affected by it, but in terms of stopping everybody dead in their tracks, it has. And I think the George Floyd murder and those sorts of things obviously set something in motion and peeled some layers off that should have been peeled off a long time ago. But I think in some ways it's not a coincidence that it happened during this time. This is a time when we've all taken stock because the world has stopped spinning.
And I think I've talked, and people I've spoken with too, think this is a good thing. It's kind of Mother Nature's way of telling us, we all need to slow down and take stock.
It's a very interesting theory, actually. It certainly is. It's hard to view it as a performing artist as a good thing because it so profoundly shakes the foundation of everything that we believe is important that we do for other people, which is to bring them together in community, to celebrate being in community and to give them a shared emotional experience. And so, but I think overall, it may help us take stock of what's important on the other side.
I know spending time with families. I know that you've had a lot of time to spend with your families, your children and your wife, and becoming a teacher too. I'm sure you've taught in so many other ways, but homeschooling is a completely different thing, I would guess.
I've taught music. I've taught conducting before, but I have never taught, long multiplication to my 10-year-old. And it's very interesting. It's in some ways very satisfying. I think I have spent, no exaggeration, collectively more time with my 8-year-old and 10-year-old boys than I have spent in the entirety of their lives up to this point. And that's just, it's a testimony to the nature of a conductor's job and the amount of time I spend away on the road, all of which has come to a screeching halt. Poignantly, on the other hand, my oldest son, who's just about to turn 17, doesn't live with me, and I've seen him once since mid-February at this point. So, it has, as it has for you said, it's a great leveler for everybody. Has put us into closer proximity and really a chance to get to know the people whom we spend the most time with, but it's also shut us off from the larger world.
Now, on the other side of things, it's I think what this COVID-19 and the and us being at home has done is it found other ways for you to bring music of the Boston Pops and to folks, new outlets for it. It's like we can't go to the concert hall, but kind of bring the concert hall to people.
Yeah, I mean, it really has made us take. We've taken baby steps in the virtual realm, reaching out to our audience via social media platforms and that sort of thing. But this has made us realize that our sole way of connecting with the people who care what goes on at the Boston Symphony and the Boston Pops is by virtual media. And we have taken a huge jump into the pool after sticking our toe in the shallow end for many years, and it's been very successful. We've had a lot of hits on almost everything we put out there. People are really eager for content. Some of it has been really interesting even for me to see, because we've done a lot of behind the scenes things. We've had conversations with Keith going on for 8 weeks now, which is an interview series. So I got to work on being my best David Frost, and or best Steve Madsen for that matter. Welcome to Conversations with Keith. I'm Keith Lockhart, the conductor of the Boston Pops, and this is my chance to introduce you to some of the people on the stage and behind the scenes who make the Boston Pops America's Orchestra. This season was to have marked my 25th anniversary as conductor of America's Orchestra, the Boston Pops. I am the 20th conductor to have held that position. People seem surprised by that fact. They tell me rather matter-of-factly that I am the third conductor of the orchestra. And when I ask them who the first conductor was, they say, well, Arthur Fiedler, of course. In fact, there were 17 conductors of the orchestra between its founding in 1885 and the year 1929. But talking to some of my colleagues whom I have known, I thought, well, for 25 years, and the discovery you have when you talk to them about when they don't have their job face on. They're not at Symphony Hall. They're in their basement or their music room or outside on their deck, and I've learned a lot about the people whom I have collaborated with and respected for all these years, and I hope the audience has too. And this is all great, and I think some element of that will continue as we go on. I think that's not going to go back in the bottle. We're not going to say, oh, fine, we can play concerts now, so we'll stop doing that. I think it really is going to change our focus from being only about the live performance experience to a combination of the live performance experience and how we can reach people virtually.
Sure. Conversations with Keith and Boston Pops at home too.
Yes, I mean we got some permissions to rebroadcast things that haven't been seen for years, including the heroic performances. There's the tape from Evening of Pops of my inaugural concert in 1995, which I have to say, yikes, I look really young. And the wonderful documentary about Arthur Fiedler made in the last couple of years of his life called Just Call Me Maestro. The heroic performances we put on the Boston Pops at Home, which a lot of musician-driven content, and they have really jumped. They've really answered the challenge. They've really been sending in things. And really, we all realize that our very survival as an art form depends on us staying in contact with the people who like what we do.
And of course, this time of year, we all think about Tanglewood, one of my absolute favorite places. But that said, with the summer season being canceled, Tanglewood 2020, the online festival now.
Well, yes, and that'll be a very interesting experiment for us. It's the first time that we've tried to, there's a mix of activities, and some of them are, income stream activities, and it remains to be seen how those do. I hope they do incredibly well, and that we get a lot of attention for that. But it must be, it must hurt in Western Massachusetts. I mean, I know the economic impacts have been horrible, not just because of Tanglewood, though that is the big that's the big fish in the pond, but
Yeah.
so much else that drives the tourism, the cultural tourism industry in the Berkshires. This is a tough year. It's tough for us. It's tough for the people who are related to the Boston Symphony directly and indirectly all across the state. And plus, I know my colleagues will just really miss being out there making music in a beautiful place for the whole summer.
It certainly is. It's tell me about the first time 25 years ago, and before that, where you set foot on the grounds of Tanglewood. What did you think?
Well, I saw Tanglewood first as a college student. I grew up in upstate New York, so in Poughkeepsie, so not that far from Tanglewood. Actually, you just head up to Albany and turn right. Take the Taconic up and then head over on 90 over to Tanglewood. I went there a couple of times as an audience member, and it was hallowed ground. I knew it as, because Bernstein's shadow was cast so big on it, and he was obviously still a major factor there at the point that I was in high school and college. But it was, this place where Benjamin Britten operas had premiered, and where Kusevitsky had held court, the man who commissioned the Bartok Concerto for Orchestra. And I grew up with Boston Symphony recordings, like every music nerd of my age and generation. But the next time I went up there, I kind of snuck up under cover of darkness to hear some performances in '94, which was before I was taken in. I had some friends on the staff who said, come in, just don't tell anybody you're here, because nobody wanted to tip the press that I was one of the people that was being considered. So I was kind of sneaking around in the periphery of Tanglewood in '94. It was the summer that Buddy Wright, the principal clarinetist at the Boston Symphony a long time, had just died, and I was a clarinet player. So that was a very tragic event for a lot of us. But then coming there as a performer in '95, I didn't have any chance to luxuriate in any mystique, because that was part of like the busiest summer of my life, and I was basically, they told me what gate to show up at, and said, "There's the podium, go conduct," and I did just that.
Does it seem like it's been 25 years?
Well, sometimes it seems like I've been here 100 years. And sometimes it seems impossible that much time has passed. It depends on the day, I suppose. It is hard to imagine, when I came, I knew it was a long-term commitment. I knew it wasn't something you just did for 5 years till something else came along. I mean, something else better came along. Well, what exactly was that going to be? It's a pretty apex job with a pretty apex organization. But but at 35, when I thought it was a long-term thing, I don't think anybody at 35 thinks a quarter century down the road. So, but here I am, and still loving the job. And, I think one of the interesting, you said it's a good thing at the end of the day, what COVID has caused. I mean, not the deaths, obviously, and all that, but what it has caused in terms of slowing things down, stopping things, causing us to recalibrate. One thing that will happen for me is I'm never, ever going to take for granted being on a stage performing for an audience again. I mean, I've always been pretty, I think, grateful about that sort of thing. But, like it's a job. I mean, I do 125, 130 concerts a year, all in. And eventually those feel like a job. And sometimes you go, oh, wow, I gotta get dressed, gotta go do the concert again. That's never gonna happen again. I can't imagine a time coming out of this where I will ever look at my watch and say, boy, I can't believe I've got to do a concert tonight.
And again, I think that's put into perspective for all of us, not taking anything we do or the people we know for granted, that there is something special. And I can't imagine what it's like to perform like on the Esplanade to tens of thousands of people, and an American tradition, to be a part of that. It just must be so special.
It is an incredible thing. It's somebody asked once early in my tenure what it felt like to perform for 500,000 people. I said, actually, feels like about same as about conducting for 50,000 people, because you can only see the first 50,000. But it is, but that was partly, it was a lie, because you can just, that much humanity, you can sense that it's there. I mean, it almost moves the compass needle. It's so many people, and you know that the orchestra that you are responsible for is the center of all those people's appreciation of. It's the reason they're there, and so yeah, it's an awesome responsibility, but also a wicked good time.
And to have your name spoken in the same breath as Arthur Fiedler, John Williams, Keith Lockhart.
Yeah, and now I'm just about almost as old now as John Williams was when I took the job from him. So these things happen. No, I mean I'm honored to be in this company. I'm honored, and I'm very fortunate to have stood on the shoulders of giants. And you know, the three of us now have had, in 10 years, when I hope I'm still conductor of the Boston Pops, the three of us will have had the job for a century. So.
That's remarkable. When you speak of it in those terms, it's like, well, okay, 25 years, but a quarter of a century. It seems to have more impact to it. You've led more than 2,000 concerts. Any one of them stand out any more memorable than the other?
No, you know, impossible. I mean, there have been great concerts that have been in some of the most intimate venues. And that 2,000 concerts, by the way, is only what I've done with the Boston Pops over the last 25 years. It's not, I was music director of a full-time orchestra in Salt Lake City during that time. I was principal conductor of one of the BBC orchestras in London during that time. So there have been a lot more concerts than just the 2,000, but the 2,000 are just the Boston Pops. And yeah, I mean, there are not so much the concerts stand out as being the best concerts, but the most extraordinary experiences. Certainly, if I had to do in all that time, my top concerts, my first 4th of July in 1995, when I got to see what that looked like and felt like for the very first time, and it really almost like hit me right square in the chest. Taking the Boston Pops to the Super Bowl in 2002, first Super Bowl after 9/11. And a time when, you know, in some ways similar to now, there was a lot of healing necessary. And you know, it was also the beginning of the Patriots dynasty, so it was fun on all sorts of levels. I'd say outside of the Boston Pops, that same week that we played the Super Bowl and the Patriots won, I flew back to Salt Lake City and led the Utah Symphony in the opening of the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. The exact same week. I said I should, you know, let the bolt of lightning strike me now. It's not going to get any better than that. And years later, in 2012, I guess, conducting for Queen Elizabeth's Diamond Jubilee, broadcast all over the world, and from the grounds of Buckingham Palace with. I joined on stage by Stevie Wonder, Elton John, Renee Fleming, Lang Lang. I'm leaving a few, Paul McCartney. You know, that was those would be the ones that were the most wow moments. Doesn't matter that they were the best concerts. It's just that I got to go, wow, I'm so lucky that I got to be here.
Did you ever imagine any of this as you were growing up in upstate New York?
Nope, I was a kid. The son of two IBMers in upstate New York who had a more than passing interest in music and was pretty good at it. But and then even when I decided to go into music, which was actually a choice I made after I started college, because I had not really ever thought that anybody actually did that for a living. And I went into music because it was important to me to perform. Anybody who goes into music because they want to be famous is either a fake or a fool. And I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed to have had these opportunities and to have collaborated with the people I've collaborated with, and to have landed, you know, as you know, the paraphrase Teddy Roosevelt, one of the bulliest pulpits in the world.
Now, as we look through 2020, I know many folks have written the year off. Beyond, as far as the Boston Pops, is everything kind of fluid right now? Nothing really in the plan?
Totally fluid. All we know is they're not doing anything through August. We even had a couple of things potentially on the books besides Tanglewood, but they have gone away now. So what the next beachhead, if you will, is is the fall season of the Boston Symphony. And I know those decisions. I'm not directly involved in them, though they'll be talking to me about them. Those decisions will be made on, best guidance and the requirements of the Commonwealth and of the CDC. So it's totally one day at a time. It's more like one portion of the season at a time. But I can tell you that we are highly motivated, that it means the world to us to be able to continue to perform, and we're going to find a way to do that the very soon as we possibly can.
Have you given any thought what it's going to be like to get back on stage behind the podium, to take up the baton? What it'll be like? I have never, since I started deciding that I wanted to be a conductor when I grew up, which is I was about 21. I have never gone more than a month without conducting and without leading an orchestra. I mean, I'm playing some piano and making some music, but without leading an orchestra, I haven't gone for more than a month. And since I just lost something in Europe in September for all these obvious reasons, if I'm lucky enough to be able to conduct in December at Holiday Pops in Symphony Hall, it will have been 9 months since the last time I was on podium. The last time was September 12th. I can tell you the program if you want, but anyway, not September 12th, March 12th. In Sarasota, Florida, with the Sarasota Orchestra. It was a lot of fun, but I would have savored the moment a lot more if I'd known what was coming after it. I'm thinking it'll be weird. I'm thinking that it will feel strange. It's like, you could be flip about it and say it's like riding a bicycle. I mean, it's, I will still know how to do what it is that I have to do, but it will be very weird because a lot of the things we do almost automatically by muscle memory at this point, now you're going to have to go, oh yeah, if I do this, this will happen. So it'll be very interesting, but I'll tell you what, I'll be there. First time I have the opportunity, I'll be on the podium an hour early waiting to be able to do it.
I cannot thank Keith Lockhart enough for being a guest on this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Now, a Boston Pop salute to our heroes airs Saturday night, July 4th at 8 o'clock on Bloomberg Television, as well as on satellite and streaming services. For more information about Boston Pops at home and conversations with Keith, you can visit the Boston Pops website, bostonpops.org. I'm Dave Madsen. Thanks for watching or listening to this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Have a safe and happy 4th of July. Stay well, and if you can, hope you'll join me next week.